My boyfriend faked a proposal, so I broke up with him. I, 24F, have been dating my boyfriend Andrew, 26M, for 5 years now. We've had a healthy and stable relationship up until today. Andrew has always been a prankster and makes jokes with me all the time, and I do it to him too. But today he took it way too far. In the morning, he woke me up at 7 a.m. and told me to wake up because he wanted to take me to the spa. I was pretty surprised because it wasn't a special day or anything, but I was all in for it. At the spa, he told me how he wanted to go to a fancy restaurant after we were done at the spa, and that he was paying. Of course, I agreed as we hadn't been out together in a long time. We then got to the restaurant. We had a beautiful and romantic dinner and just a nice time in general. We were talking about a house that we were planning to move into and chit-chatted about other stuff too. After around 40 minutes, Andrew stood up and got on his knees and took out a box out of his pocket. My heart stopped beating. I hadn't even predicted this. We have never talked about proposals before, but I also thought it was a great time now. He gave a speech about how I was the most beautiful girl in the world and how he wanted to live with me forever, and ended with, "Will you marry me, princess?" And of course I said yes. Seconds later, all that excitement turned into horror. He opened the small box that I expected he put the ring into, and it was a note saying, "You've been pranked," and Andrew started laughing hysterically. He continued with, "Baby, this was just a prank. I'm not ready to marry you yet," and he was leaning in to hug me, but I gave him the biggest slap ever with tears streaming down my face. I just told him, "We are over, you effing scumbag." I am now sitting in my bed crying and writing this as I don't know what to do. He's been texting and calling me all day, but I haven't responded because I feel so sad, betrayed, and mostly angry. I thought this was going to be one of the best days of my life. What should I do? Update. Thank you guys so much for all the love and the replies on my last post. I honestly did not expect it to get as much attention as it did, but I'm very grateful for that, and it has helped me a lot. After I made my Reddit post, I fell asleep crying, then woke up and decided to call my now ex-boyfriend, and I told him that it was over, and that I didn't want to be together with someone who after 5 years still isn't ready for marriage, and makes a big joke about it. He cried and then turned angry and demanded me to stay, and told me I was a effing a-hole for leaving him like this after everything he has done for me, his words, and he cussed me out so much that I stopped listening at one point, so I don't really remember everything he said. In the end, we came to sort of an agreement that we are going to sell the house and that he will be sleeping in the guest room for now. So today I've just been scrolling the internet for apartments so I can have a fresh start. He is still not happy about the breakup though. He is trying so bad to get back with me, saying stuff the whole day like, "Can't we be together again?" And "This was just a small mistake I made." But the one thing that did it for me is when he said, "Don't be so effing petty and drop it. You know we are happy together and you know you still want me." And let me tell you, when he said that, I absolutely lost it and called him every single name I could come up with, then slammed my door. I think he also told his family about this whole situation because today I got a call from his mom telling me how selfish I am and how I couldn't handle a simple joke. And it ended with her calling me an S-word and hanging up the call. After that, I've gotten several messages from his other family members, such as his siblings, his dad, and even his aunt. I've just tried to block all of them, but every now and then a message comes through. I feel like more will happen, but the next update will probably not be in less than a week or so, as I'm going to try and sell stuff that I don't need, as well as find a new apartment and fix everything with the house and stuff before we put it up for sale. I just want to get out of here as quickly as possible. Update number 2. Hello everyone, it's been a while since my last post, and once again, I want to thank you all so much for the support and love. As for now, this will probably be my last update. After my last post, we had constant fights for days during the evenings, and one day I decided that I had enough. My closest friend let me move in with her for now until I find somewhere else to live, and I still don't know what we're exactly going to do with our house, but I've gotten lawyers involved and it's going to take quite a while. The biggest incident since I last posted is probably that I met my ex's mom in a mall and she full out screamed at me in public. I have never felt so humiliated. Everyone probably thought I had done something horrible as she yelled things like, "How could you do this to my son?" and "You're a terrible human being." I just walked away, but I still felt so embarrassed. Also, ever since I moved, constant messages have appeared from my ex, from his friends, and from his family members, and they are nasty messages, such as, "No one would give a flying F if you died, you are a waste of space," or "You are such a self-centered S-word, leaving your boyfriend over a small joke." I try to ignore them, but sometimes I do break down over them. This situation has also helped me learn who my real friends are, as some of my friends have turned their back against me. This whole thing still feels so surreal to me, and it's going to take a long time for me to process it. However, if there is anything else that I need to update you on, I will. Thank you all again so much for the support. It honestly has been helping me a lot. Okay, so I've read a lot of these stories, and if you're around here often or these other types of videos, maybe you've seen this often where somebody, typically somebody who opposes OP, gets a whole group of family members or friends to gang up on OP. And I'm thinking to myself, where are they getting all these people from? I do not have the means to get 15 to 20 people to gang up on my ex or somebody who did me wrong. And I'm starting to get kind of jealous. I want 50 friends and family members. Actually, no, I don't. That's a lot of birthday calls. Oh my God. And Christmas time? Never mind. You know what? I just need 5 to 10 friends, and then we'll just gang up on all of our enemies together. But as for the story, the guy's an idiot. I think we all know that. If it's fine if your love language is pranking people and stuff like that, but that is so obviously way too far. And now that's the consequence of your joke. Hope you enjoy it. Anyway, next story. Story number 2. I, 26F, kicked my soon-to-be ex-friend, 25F, out of my house, aka the Kendall Chronicles. As the title says, last week I kicked what I thought was a good friend out of my house because I can no longer handle her antics. I just want to write it here to de-stress and deal with the grief of losing a friend. Kendall, 25F, and I met in university in 2016. We studied different majors, but from the same department, so we shared many classes together, and bonded over our passion for gaming and memes. Upon graduation, Kendall moved back to her hometown due to COVID and found a job there. We kept in touch online through Instagram. About 3 years later, Kendall told me she found a better paying job in the city, so she's planning to move out from her parents' place. When I asked her about her plans on her accommodations, she replied with, "That's the thing. I was going to ask you if you have an extra bedroom that I can move into." For context, I inherited an apartment from my late grandfather, which is a nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath near the city center last year in January, and I currently live alone there since it is closer to my workplace and it has all the convenience of public transport. After some thinking, I thought there's no harm in living with Kendall since I considered us close friends. We discussed the terms and, of course, the rent. A week later, Kendall moved into my apartment. It was great at first. My home felt more lively than usual, and the thought of going home to a close friend warmed my heart and gave me a sense of security. Things were okay for a while, and then crap goes downhill super quick. Kendall started complaining about many things at home, about her work, her savings, and how she feels homesick. At first, I was very accommodating, thinking maybe she just needs to get used to the city life. I offered as much help as I can, even to the point of, if she's low on money, I don't mind voiding a month's rent if it meant I could help her to achieve financial stability. I taught her how I save money, how I live off with my then low salary with several commitments like my car, my dog, and a student loan. I grew up where my parents expected me to be independent, so I told her things that I would do when I'm low on cash, how to get freelance jobs, etc. But she always seems to have an excuse for every suggestion I have. Finding a freelance job is too hard, or how she couldn't let go of her premium junk food, that she isn't willing to cook or meal prep, and I eventually decided to leave it as it is. And after 2 months of living together, I realized Kendall started treating me as some kind of competition. She would constantly ask me things like how much money I make in a month, how many job hoppings did that take. Anything that she thinks she's better than me, she'll definitely pop that question. She boasts about how she is loyal to her crappy paying company, her words, and how I would never be able to move up the corporate ladder as she called me an industry frog. She once snooped my savings balance and asked how TF did I have so much saved up with commitments, etc. Mind you, she didn't have a lot of commitments since her parents paid off her student loans and fully paid off a brand new car for her, and she said maybe I should stop collecting rent from her because of her finding my savings. I got mad and I told her if she isn't happy living with me, then maybe she should move out. Cue the crocodile tears as she said it was a joke and I didn't have to take her seriously, and she begged for forgiveness and promised to never snoop through my personal items and details again. I let it go once, but she kept bringing things up like, well, you have the cash and a credit card, every time I told her that I would rather stay home because I no longer have the budget to go out and have fun. Comments like these became more frequent when I got a new job 6 months ago. On top of that, she doesn't clean up after herself, tried to flirt with my boyfriend, and at times parked in my parking space when our initial agreement was that she has to find her own parking space if she's moving in with her own car, because my apartment only has one parking lot per unit. But the straw that broke the camel's back was when I caught her kicking my dog in his abdomen when I got home from work. I yelled at her and rushed to check my dog. Luckily, he was fine, but I still rushed him to the vet for safety measures. I got home and she sneered that it was just a dog, and as a friend, I shouldn't treat her like that. I asked her why she would kick my dog, and she didn't answer me. She shrugged and tried to escape into her room. At this point, it was already about a year since Kendall moved in with me, and I lost my cool and told her off, bringing up her problems and how I tried to be nice and accommodating. Then I told her I'm giving her a week to move out, and that from then on, I rather we keep our relationship casual or we don't ever talk at all. Kendall cried and begged me not to kick her out, but soon it turned into her screaming back at me, calling me a bad friend because apparently in her words, I didn't tell her off on how badly she was behaving. Like what? There was a lot of back and forth, which I don't remember what I said, but I remember eventually calling her an entitled brat. She cried again, saying it was uncalled for, and stormed off into her room. The next day, I was bombarded with text messages from other university friends, some calling me selfish and others sympathizing with me. Apparently, Kendall posted our argument on Facebook and Instagram, painting me to be the bad guy. I was upset at first, but I decided that after Kendall moved out, we would no longer be friends, as well as those who took her side of the story and condemned me. Last week, Kendall finally left, and I have changed the locks on my apartment. I curled up in my bed and cried myself out, probably from the sadness of losing a friend, or maybe I am finally letting out all the frustrations. I am definitely still grieving about this loss of a friend, as I've had many good times with Kendall, but for now I want to focus on myself, and hopefully I eventually get over this. Edit. The whole teasing that I have more money than Kendall got worse when I told her I was given an offer by an MNC as a senior designer, and I disclosed to her the offered salary, as we always did, because I like to know how much she earns too. And the offered amount was 50% more than her salary. That was dumb on my part. I now understand why my parents told me to never discuss or disclose salaries the moment I started working. Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, Kendall should eat a whole bag of dongs. You did well for looking out for yourself and your dog. Yeah, it took me a year to see how my friend didn't treat me like one. Then user 2 commented and said, per your post, I would think that Kendall is a user rather than an actual friend. You will need time to heal. I recommend that you seek short-term psychological counseling to help, and maybe find out how to more effectively set and enforce personal boundaries. I'm planning to look into those as well, if I can afford them, but for the time being, I'll try to find comfort in spending time with my dog, my boyfriend, and drowning in my hobbies. Then user 3 said, OP, if I were you, I'd be telling everyone she was hurting your dog. That would probably swing some opinions real quick. I did, but some people still called me an a-hole for kicking out a poor girl who has traveled far from her hometown out into a big city. I got off fine, but why can't she? Then user 4 said, also, time to step back for just a moment. Your so-called friend had no student loans and a brand new car. She has parents who can help her out. They created this puppy-kicking monster. They can deal with her. You gave her plenty of opportunities to play nice. You don't owe her squat. Hold your head high, and you are a wonderful person. Yeah, and I don't understand where her money went. Her wallets are always empty near the end of the month. She once showed me her savings balance, which was 2 digits. She was asking if I could lend her money. Luckily, I didn't lend her any, but that's probably why she was angry at me for a week. Then user 5 commented and said, this type hates being told no. They often seek revenge. If they put a fraction of that energy into working for what they wanted, they'd be in great shape. May you think of her no more and enjoy your life. Exactly what I thought. There were so many other things and ways she could have worked around to be stable financially. It's true, I probably didn't didn't have to collect rent from her, but I was glad I did, even if it wasn't a year's worth. I spent so much for that thorough checkup of my dog after she kicked him. Then the next user commented and said, I would have thrown her out on her ass the second I saw her kick my dog. That is completely unacceptable. She's lucky you even gave her a week. It ain't easy out in the city where I'm from, but she moved out in a couple of days after I asked her to move out. Last I heard, one of our university friends who called me an a-hole allowed her to crash at their place while she finds her own place to rent. I wish them good luck for sure though, because they are gonna end up just like me. Then the next user commented and said, OP, change your accounts so all paperwork is clear so she cannot pretend to be you. Social Security office visit to be sure no new accounts have been opened in your name is mandatory to cleanse sociopath vibe from your life. Oh, no worries about that. Where I'm from, to make most accounts, you would need my fingerprints and my physical ID, which neither have been missing, but thanks for that heads up though. I've never considered that from this angle. And finally, one user commented and said, anyone who could harm such a sweet dog would instantly be dead to me. For this alone, you are absolutely in the right. I was really worried, but luckily the vet said he's as fit as a fiddle and as sturdy as ever. From the checkups and with my vet's assurance, it seems like I caught her hurting my dog for the first time. He has never shown any sign of nervousness or anxiety near Kendall up until the day that she kicked him. Then again, I didn't have cameras installed at home, so I'm not sure if she has ever attempted anything prior to this. The most important thing is my dog is still healthy and happy, with a tiny bruise which dissipated after a few days. Update 1. 3 weeks later. Hello everyone, I'm here with some updates about me and my dog, as well as my now ex-friend, Kendall. Let's start off with the update about myself. I've been doing well, and surprisingly, as some of you mentioned previously, I had gotten over the loss of this friendship rather quickly. My boyfriend planned a trip to a pet-friendly beachfront hotel, and I spent a few days with just my boyfriend and the dog. We played in the seawater, and I watched my dog play in the sand. Overall, had a great time, and we even grilled fish together while watching the sunset. My dog had a deboned fish fillet. I am also grateful for my friends who stood by my side regarding this issue. They check in on me from time to time and sent me funny content to watch during my free time. Some of them even told me their stories about Kendall and their discomfort with her behavior, which I will list some below. Friend A. Kendall ridiculed Friend A several times because Friend A earned less than Kendall, despite he has worked a year longer than Kendall. Friend B. Kendall trash-talked Friend B's company via Instagram just because Kendall fluked her interview with said company with flying colors. Friend C. Kendall always demands Friend C to be her personal driver during our college days. If Friend C refuses, Kendall will guilt trip her. And Friend D. She ruined Friend D's assignment by pranking him. She actually formatted his laptop when the project was due in 2 weeks. When confronted, all Kendall said was, oopsies. There are many more of these, but these are the more icky ones I've heard from my friends. And now with that out of the way, here is today's main course. After I kicked Kendall out of the house, one of my university friends, let's call her Anne, stood by Kendall's version of events and has allowed Kendall to move in with her instead. Anne called me out of the blue this afternoon, and her first question to me was, how on earth did you manage to put up with Kendall for a year? She's driving me crazy. Long story short, whatever Kendall did when she's living with me, she now does it to Anne. Snooping through Anne's personal items, leaving dirty laundry around, generally being a prick in the butt. Anne told me she's planning to force Kendall out of her house too. I didn't comment much, since Anne was amongst those who called me a cruel person, but now it has come back to bite her. But wait, that's not all. According to Anne, Kendall has lost her job because she tried to ask for a 100% increment and assaulted her supervisor when the increment request was turned down 2 weeks ago. She was immediately escorted out of the office building by security, and she just texted me 20 minutes ago saying she needed a favor from me, that she wants a job at my workplace. I replied stating that there isn't any vacancy, and to be honest, even if there is, I wouldn't hire her. So yeah, I hope this is the last time I will hear from Kendall, and I will only update if somehow something interesting happened that involves Kendall. Now here are some more relevant comments. User 1 commented and said, OP, when your friend Anne mentioned that she was going to kick Kendall out, why didn't you reply with, wouldn't that be cruel though? I went with a sarcastic tone, sort of like, oh wow, really? What happened? Then user 2 commented and said, I bet Kendall applies to the company and uses OP as a reference anyway. Regarding this, I have no worries about it, since HR has to wait for me to filter through candidates for my department before sending out an email invite for job interviews. I'll make sure to shred Kendall's if I see hers. OP, what about other departments? Kendall only has skills for my department, sadly. I'm working in an advertising agency. It's either graphic designer or motion designer. Kendall can't for the love of God make good designs. She would only want my department. Even if she tried, I doubt she could get into my company since one of the requirements is to be able to converse in basic Japanese, and you are tested during the interview, plus you would need to show the certification of JLPT. Thanks for giving this advice, guys, but no worries, I doubt Kendall would be able to pass the first screening. Then user 4 commented and said, I can imagine her turning up to your doorstep wanting a place to stay. Do you have a doorbell camera? Just in case, she might be getting desperate for friends and needs a place to stay now that people are realizing how crazy she is. I have set up a new doorbell camera. I live in an apartment and there's plenty of cameras in the lift and corridor. Plus, I wouldn't be that afraid of her appearing at my doorstep since the security would call me to verify if I have visitors. A simple no would render her plans useless. Then user 5 commented and said, please keep us posted if anything happens with Kendall going forward. This is too funny and she is too crazy for this to be the end of it. Man, I can't believe I was crying over the loss of this friendship. Right now I'm laughing at everything she has done or tried to do to people. OP, shouldn't she have been arrested for the assault at work? Maybe her employer didn't press charges? I don't know. OP, how many days did Kendall stay with Anne? I think it's about or almost a month. She moved in quite quickly with Anne after I told her she had a week to leave. Update number 2, 3 months after original post. At this point, I wonder if I should change the title to the Kendall Chronicles. Hello everyone, it's been about 2 months since I kicked my now ex-friend Kendall out of my home. For those who read my story before, I just want to let you guys know that the dog and I are well fed and happy. If you guys remember last time, Anne, one of my friends who sided with Kendall, told me about all the horrible things that has happened while having Kendall as a roommate. And oh boy, Anne had to call the cops to evict Kendall. Also, I did happen to meet Anne at a pet-friendly cafe to enjoy a good book yesterday, while my dog tries to enjoy playing at the doggy daycare area. I did wonder if it was intentional on her side, since all my friends know I love this cafe in particular. Anne greeted me and asked me if she could sit and have a chat with me. We started out with some small talk, but the moment she brought up about her evicting Kendall, I just sat there and listened. I gave Anne a smile and prodded her lightly with a comment that I borrowed from the previous comment section on Reddit, and I said to her, "Oh, so you're really gonna kick her out then? I remember someone told me last time it was cruel to kick a friend out of their homes." Anne stuttered for a while before saying how I should have made a post to counter and clarify Kendall's social media claims about me. I simply told her neither have I the energy to do so, nor have I the need to, which in turn landed us in some brief awkward silence before I asked what she needed from me. Anne told me she wanted someone to vent to about Kendall and didn't know who to turn to, and told me she filed a police report against Kendall for theft and destruction of property, and ultimately Anne needed the assistance of police officers to evict Kendall from her home. She is also in the midst of filing a restraining order, as she mentioned Kendall looked completely psycho at that moment. Unlike me, Anne lives in a landed property, so I guess she'd be a lot more worried about Kendall coming back to find her. Kendall apparently also stole Anne's debit card and spent a whopping $2,000 in total. Anne only found out about the missing money when she found her debit card missing from her wallet. She checked the bank accounts only to find that $2,000 went to clothes, expensive meals, and clubbing activities. At this point, one might ask, how did Anne know it was Kendall that spent that money? Well, the answer presented itself when Kendall came home screaming at Anne for terminating her debit card. According to Anne, Kendall was shouting every insult in the book while flailing her arms around with Anne's debit card in hand, which Kendall then proceeded to slam the card on the table before storming off into her room. That was the first time Anne felt afraid of another person, much less a friend. Since then, Kendall made Anne's life hell on earth. Kendall would leech off of Anne's groceries, judge her choice of snacks, body shame Anne, etc. Kendall also attempted to seduce Anne's boyfriend. She once kissed Anne's boyfriend, let's call him Jason, on the cheek and giggled before running straight for her room during movie night. In another instance, she groped Jason's manhood right in front of Anne, but later claimed that she was drunk and thought what she touched was a couch pillow. The worst thing that Kendall did, though, was throw herself onto Jason and say she has a fever, and later guided Jason's hand to feel her breast, in which Anne walked in at the same time, and Jason's hand was under Kendall's shirt. These incidents have since caused a strain between the three, and Jason felt awkward to the point where he told Anne he would stop visiting her house unless Kendall moves out. Anne cried for a bit when she reached this part. Anne then told Kendall to move out and gave her a week to do so. Kendall then cried and ran out of the house, only to come back in later in the evening to lock herself in her room. Anne presumed that Kendall was packing her stuff, and she decided to ignore Kendall for the time being. The next morning, Anne woke up to the sound of some grunts and broken ceramics. She rushed out to her yard to see an unhinged Kendall swinging a rod against everything she could hit: a tree, flower pots, even the grass on the ground. This led Anne to immediately lock her doors and call the police, fearing for her own safety. The police arrived and handled the situation swiftly, and they took Kendall away. There was still a lot of screaming and shouting. Anne said she's not sure if Kendall is being locked up or has anyone who would have posted bail for her. While I guess it kinda was nice to sip tea about Kendall, the way Anne described her and the way she's behaving, I wonder if she actually did need professional help. I can't help but feel sad for her condition, despite the fact that we have gone no contact for 2 months. Now, here are some more relevant comments. User 1 said, "And why is this still your problem? Anne made her choice. Why are you still talking to her? She's not a good friend. She is like Kendall, a two-faced snake." I have went no contact since Anne's last call 2 months ago, but I believed she went to my favorite cafe spot to try to bump into me. And well, I have a hard time turning down others, so I decided to serve myself some Kendall tea, I guess. After this, I probably do not want to hear anything more about Kendall, Anne, or anybody that decided to take sides with Kendall. Then user 2 commented and said, "What about Anne's boyfriend? He's not naive to the point of having his hand led under Kendall's shirt, is he?" Anne told me only about the things that Kendall did to Jason. Maybe she did mention his reaction, but I just don't remember the entire thing she told me. I have bad memory. The gist of it is that these interactions had affected their relationship. She didn't further elaborate, and I did not probe. And finally, user 3 commented and said, "While these stories are interesting to read, I wonder how true they actually are. If her parents were so wealthy and paid for her education and car, then at what point has anyone called them and informed them to her behavior? I'm not buying it." I never had her parents' contact, so it didn't really cross my mind to call her parents. While it is hard to believe, it is true. Some of us had long severed ties with Kendall since her incident with me. Kendall also didn't say much about her parents. All I know is that she moved out of her parents' place because she wanted a better paying job. Okay guys, so I think we all can admit that Kendall is a little crazy and a little flawed. Do I think this story is fake? I don't really think so. I don't have reason to believe there is plenty of crazy people out there, and I say this frequently, it's not the craziest thing we've heard on this channel. But I will say Kendall probably does need help with her mental health in some way, shape, or form, and hopefully somebody involved in this story can contact her rich, wealthy parents so that way they can help and assist their puppy-kicking daughter who desperately needs help. But anyway, fellow viewer, I have a question for you. Do you think I should ask Kendall out? Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right. All right, I'm gonna do it. Anyway, next story. Story number 3. Am I the a-hole for not wanting my wife to do surrogacy? My 34M wife, Olivia, 32F, was asked by her sister, 29F, if she could be her surrogate. Her sister, Sophia, has struggled with infertility for years, and she and her husband have been wanting a kid for a long time. Olivia and I have 4 sons, 10, 5 again, and 3, and don't plan on having more children. My wife Olivia wants to do this for her sister and already agreed to it before discussing it with me. After Olivia gave birth to our youngest, she suffered from postpartum depression. I'm worried that this might happen again, and not to mention the toll it will take on her body. I spoke to her and told her my many concerns, but she got defensive and began yelling at me, telling me that I'm a horrible person for not wanting to help Sophia and her husband after they've struggled for so long. I told her that I wanted them to be able to have a kid, but there were other options that didn't involve her. She shouted some more and stormed out of the house and didn't come back until the morning. I messaged Sophia's husband, Dean, as he and I get really well. I told him how I felt about the situation, and he completely understood and told me he would talk to Sophia. He messaged me later that night and told me he had tried to change Sophia's mind, but she wouldn't listen. When my wife Olivia came home from work that night, she stormed up to me and slapped me. She told me that Sophia said Dean didn't want to follow through with the surrogacy because of me, and Sophia was really upset about it. Olivia called me selfish and told me to get over it because she's doing it regardless of how I feel. I have given up talking to her about it because I don't want her to get more angry. She's been sleeping in the guest room, and I'm pretty sure she's only staying at the house because of the boys. We barely talk, and she doesn't even look at me. I got a message from Dean saying they've got an appointment later this week to begin the process, and I don't know what to do anymore. I don't want to see her go through what she did again. I guess there's nothing I can do though, and she's already made up her mind. Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "Dude, I think your marriage has bigger problems than your sister-in-law's pregnancy desire." Then user 2 commented and said, "Help or not, I would be more worried about your wife's behavior towards you. You expressed concern and she turned to anger and physically assaulted you. This is not good behavior towards a loved one, not the a-hole for expressing your concerns." And finally, user 3 commented and said, "The slap alone would push me to a divorce lawyer. Not to mention all the shouting. This is what she's like when she's not suffering from PPD? A friend of mine did this for someone, and the hormones they put her through so she could carry the embryo was brutal. Her moods were off the chart. I'm sure she expects you to cater to her every passing whim. This doesn't sound like something that should happen without both married partners agreeing." Update. I've been reading the comments on my first post for the last several days, and I'm feeling a mix of emotions from them. There are things I need to address, so I'll do that now before I get into what's been happening since the post. To start off, many people have noticed that I haven't replied to anyone's comments and are calling me out for it. To be honest, I didn't plan on answering any comments. I've seen posts where the OP doesn't reply to anyone, so I didn't think it was a big deal. The comments were very overwhelming as well. I've also seen a lot of comments saying that this is fake, and honestly, I wish it was, but it isn't. I would never lie about something like this. I'm not the type of guy to do that. And the reason my account is new is because I didn't want to post anything on my main account. There have also been messages that I have received that have been less than kind and haven't helped in the slightest with what's been happening. The things people have sent me are really hurtful and disgusting. And I've noticed people calling me an a-hole for going behind Olivia's back and talking to Dean. The reason I spoke to Dean was because anytime I tried to speak to Olivia, she would ignore me and walk away. Sophia wasn't even an option. She hasn't liked me since Olivia and I began dating. I have no idea why, but she's always been rude to me, and I knew if I talked to her about it, it wouldn't go well. And the one thing that everyone has been talking about, the abuse. So, this hasn't been the first time that Olivia has hit me. This started a few months before our oldest was born. It happened out of nowhere. I talked to her about it and she promised it wouldn't happen again, but it did. Every time she would hit me, she would apologize afterwards, but soon she stopped apologizing. I did try to stand up to her, but whenever I did, she hit me harder, and she said she would scream if I did anything. I told her I'd go to the police, and she said that she'd claim it was self-defense. She then began to mock me by saying that no one would ever believe me, and that they would all side with her, and I'd never see my boys again. It just got worse as the years passed. I know a lot of people will call me weak and that I need to grow a pair, but I was terrified. I didn't want to lose my kids. They mean everything to me, and if I had to put up with the abuse to be with them, then I would. Olivia has never touched the boys, thankfully. I asked her one time if she had, and let's just say that didn't end well. I've checked them for marks and have seen nothing, and the boys are hardly out of my sight, and I haven't seen anything amiss. She has also never hit me in front of them. She always does it when they're not around. My two older brothers, Sam and Jack, figured out what was happening and begged me to go to the police, but I couldn't. I asked them not to say anything, but my oldest brother, Sam, has a friend who's a lawyer, and I found out only recently that they've been talking to him about it and have been secretly telling him when they notice I have a new mark or when something happens. But back to the main problem though. I hadn't seen Olivia for almost 2 days, and when she came back, I asked if we could talk. The boys were with Jack for the day, so they weren't in the house. She went to walk away again, but I stepped in front of her and said that we needed to talk. This was the first time I had stood up to her in years, and I was scared as hell. She looked shocked, but then she put the scowl back on her face and huffed out, "Fine." I had my phone beside me and recorded the whole conversation. We sat on the couch and I told her again how I felt about the surrogacy, and she kept rolling her eyes and scoffing every time I said something. I told her I was worried about how it would affect our family. I brought up the PPD again, and she got angry. She started yelling at me, telling me it was my fault that she had it and that I should have never gotten her pregnant. Every kid except for our oldest, who wasn't planned, was her idea. That's not to say that I didn't want my boys, I did, but I didn't have a say about it. She called me a horrible father and husband and said that I should support her. I said that if she goes through with the surrogacy, I won't be supporting her as it's not my kid. She got mad, hit me, called me an a-hole, hit me again, and left the house. I called Sam and asked if he could come over and waited for him to arrive. When he got to my house, I just broke down. I told him everything about what's been going on. The abuse, the surrogacy, the self-harm, and thoughts about taking my own life. He hugged me and told me it would be alright and everything would work out. This is when he told me about his lawyer friend and how he and Jack have been talking to him. I told him I recorded the conversation with Olivia, and he said he would send it to his friend, along with a photo of the bruise from when she hit me before, and a few other marks as well. I had given up years ago, and my kids were the only thing keeping me going. I suffered from depression and self-harm, which I still do, and I think if I didn't have my boys, I wouldn't be here. I'm finally standing up for myself, and it feels really good. I'm going to divorce her and go for full custody. I just hope the courts won't take her side. And I just want to thank everyone who has been really kind about this, especially the people who messaged me. I haven't replied to all of them, but just know that I appreciate it so much. Now, here are some more relevant comments. User 1 said, "Next time, try to install hidden cameras or something for video proof, but good luck and I hope you win the custody." Then User 2 commented and said, "Finally, go to the police, get a restraining order, and serve her with the divorce papers." And finally, User 3 commented and said, "Not the a-hole. You should do 2 things, OP. 1, gather evidence. Hide cameras in the main areas and/or your bedroom, and document everything. 2, make an exit plan. Get all your important documents together, create an emergency fund, and find a place to go." So, one thing that doesn't always get talked about a lot is the fact that males can be victims of abuse too. Hell, it even happened in the last story, but OP wasn't the victim to that kind of abuse. But I mean, typically the man won't get physically overpowered or something like that, but they can kind of be blackmailed in a sort of way. It's like, hey, if you do anything, I'm just gonna be like, it was self-defense, no one's gonna believe you, you're gonna lose your kids, and that's scary stuff. I honestly can't remember the last time, if ever, we got a story like this before. If we did, I could probably count it on one hand, but it's important to remember that this kind of stuff exists. And hopefully we get an update down the line, because I want to know what happens next, and I hope he gets out. And thank goodness for recording it. He's like, hey, let me hit record so you can do your thing, you terrible, evil person. Anyway, next story. Story number 4. My partner wants me to cut off the friend who introduced us, and I'm really lost. My 27M girlfriend, 25F Eva, of nearly 6 years, and I were talking about the prospect of getting engaged recently when she brought up that it was her expectation that once I propose, I would also cut contact with Leah, 27F, one of my closest friends, as well as the person who introduced us. Some backstory. Leah and I went to the same middle school/high school, and we became friends along the way and had become quite close by graduation. We didn't go to the same college, but we were still in the same area, so we stayed in touch, though we saw each other less frequently. A couple of years in, she told me I absolutely had to meet this girl because she just knew I would like her. She dragged us both to a small get-together. Both Eva and I were and still are introverts to Leah's social butterfly persona, and she introduced us, did some wingmanning, and made herself scarce for the rest of the evening. And spoiler alert, Leah was right, and I did like Eva a lot from the get-go. We shared interests, hobbies, a sense of humor, and we clicked from the first evening. Leah made sure to give me every chance not to fumble this by setting up our first date shortly thereafter, and I thankfully, surprisingly, didn't fumble it. Soon enough, Eva and I were officially together and in love. Moved in together once I got a job, and it felt like a foregone conclusion that eventually we'd get engaged, married, and all that stuff. Eva's recent demand came completely out of left field to me, as she had never raised concerns about my friendship with Leah until now, and as far as I could tell, counted Leah as a friend of hers as well. Over the course of this relationship, the majority of my in-person interactions with Leah also involved Eva, and we each met with her individually outside of that. To be clear, I'm not denying that I am closer to Leah than Eva is. I'm just saying that they're not complete strangers without me in the equation. Now, a key issue Eva raised is that I did once have a crush on Leah. Once, in this case, refers to when I was 15 and had just gotten to know her, and is something Eva and I had discussed within our first month of dating when she asked me if there had ever been anything between us. I didn't hide anything from her, and I told her there was a one-sided crush at the very beginning that had been history for a while, and that nothing ever happened. She was fine with that then, and this is the first time she's brought it up since. However, she now says that if she and I are to tie the knot, she does not want someone in our lives who I once had a romantic interest in. She added that she hadn't liked my getting involved in Leah's last serious relationship by telling her to ditch the guy, which I did because she's my friend and the dude was an a-hole, and that while she didn't suspect that anything happened between me and Leah at this stage, she didn't want to take the chance, especially as Leah now has a pronounced interest in finding someone to settle down with. Eva told me there's no hurry and that this wasn't an ultimatum and didn't want to argue about it, but that I should wrap my head around this ahead of proposing to her, which we weren't talking about as a tomorrow thing, but not something too far in the future either. I haven't spoken to Leah or anyone really about this yet because I'm still hoping this is something that can be diffused. And bringing her into it now seems counterproductive in that regard, both because it could get her pissed at Eva and Eva pissed at me. And I'm really conflicted. On the one hand, Leah is an important friend to me, one who's done a lot for me over the years, brought me out of my shell when I was an awkward teen. On the other hand, by far what I'm most thankful to her for is that she introduced me to Eva, so throwing that away is really a non-starter. But back to the one hand, I don't really feel like Eva is making much of a case here. I'd even be willing to concede that the near-forgotten and short-lived crush could still be a valid argument, but not when it was a non-issue for 6 years. I just don't know how I'm supposed to approach this. Edit. A small clarification based on something I've seen in a few comments. When I say I don't know how to approach this, I don't mean I don't know whether or not I'll cut Leah out of my life. As things are and from the reasons Eva has given me, I don't consider cutting Leah out as an option. What I mean is that I'm not sure how to approach this with Eva to diffuse the situation and not lose her if it can be at all avoided. Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "If you wanted to get with Leah, you could have tried something again far before meeting Eva. It is a little weird to me that you have both been together for 6 years and Eva would drop this kind of bomb on you to cut out an important friend from your life. I'm sure some will get on the whole guys and girls can't be friends thing, and that once married, some see it as appropriate to cut off communication with friends of the opposite sex, but I think this is just a BS attempt to admit that people like that don't trust their partner. She said she doesn't want to give an ultimatum, so tell her, I love you, but I'm not going to cut out important people from my life as grounds for a proposal. And don't even go the route of asking her to cut out male friends. As for a silly crush back when you were 15, this is just a part of her trusting you not to screw her over. After all, what else is love than that? I like the proposal that you offered, and I guess that's all I really can do. Yeah, just not sure what my next step is if that doesn't work." Then user 1 commented again and said, "I wonder if she knows something about Leah regarding you, or if Leah said something like, 'Oh, you're so lucky, I'm so sad I missed my shot with him.'" I did ask her if anything had triggered this stance from her and specifically mentioned if it was something I or Leah did or said. And it was in the context that she brought up my intervening in Leah's relationship, which was a year ago or so, but she didn't point to anything Leah said or did. Then user 2 commented and said, "Yes, if this is out of character for your girlfriend, I'm thinking there must be some sort of catalyst. Is your friend now single after having been in a relationship for most of your friendship / you and your girlfriend's relationship?" Leah has been single longer than usual since her last breakup, a bit more than a year, but it's not the first time she's been single for an extended period of time since I've been friends with her, or since I've gotten with Eva. She was single when she introduced us too. Then OP elaborated on how much he was helping Leah dealing with her breakup and if that affected Eva and said, "Honestly, I was pretty damn involved with the breakup. It really hasn't been a habit of mine to chime in negatively on her choice of partners, and I even got along quite well with most of the ones I met. But this dude, I couldn't stand from day one. I held my tongue about it for several months, but at some point I was fed up with him making Leah miserable, emotionally abusing her, gaslighting her. I was pretty sure he was cheating based on stuff she told me, so I intervened. I dropped by her place and told her everything I thought of the guy and that she should break up with him because she deserves better. I actively talked her into it, and she ended things with him less than a week later. Also, Eva knew I would be doing this and agreed with my opinion of the guy, but it was my call and my call only to actually step in. Leah was kind of a mess in the aftermath, but we didn't really see each other one-on-one much at the time. We talked on the phone maybe a bit more than usual, and Eva and I hung out with her together a few times, but I wasn't her whole support system or anything like that. Update. So, this weekend, after getting all my thoughts in order, I let Eva know we needed to talk and what it was about. She initially pushed back, reiterating she didn't want to argue, but I insisted and told her it shouldn't need to be an argument, and we should be able to discuss this. I proceeded by telling her that she is the one I love and want to be with, that Leah is still just a friend, albeit an important one, but that I would not be cutting her out of my life, as that was an unreasonable request to make in the absence of inappropriate behavior from either of us. I told her that this stance was final and added that I hoped we would be able to communicate and get to the bottom of where this all stemmed from and move forward together. She wasn't happy about this, but she didn't shut down the discussion either, and we had a long talk afterwards. Amongst other things, she again conceded that Leah hadn't done or said anything to cause issues between Eva and I, and that she did actually know that the 12-year-old crush was not really relevant, nor was it a big deal, and she was kinda grasping at straws bringing it up. As it turns out, a bigger factor for her was my involvement in Leah's breakup last year and a perceived change in the aftermath of that. She told me that she didn't disagree that the guy was an ass or even that someone needed to convince Leah to break it off, but she hadn't been comfortable about the way I had gone about it. I talked about it in a comment on the original post, but basically I just ended up deciding to do it myself at some point, went to Leah's place and convinced her she deserved better. At the time, I told Eva I would be doing that but didn't consult with her about how or anything. She went on to say that she had this sinking feeling that I was not just a friend in Leah's eyes anymore since then. She mentioned Leah had been single ever since, not dating much yet, and had voiced a desire to settle down soon, and that I was the guy closest to her. She admitted these things weren't in and of themselves evidence of anything, but she couldn't shake the feeling. I told her that I didn't think it was the case, and that Leah had always been and continued to be supportive of our relationship, and that maybe talking to her about it could help. We put that thought aside for the time being, and I brought up that her request suggested that she didn't really trust me, and that was a big issue. Eva didn't really know what to say to that, aside from reiterating she wasn't accusing me of having done anything, or having any intention to. That this was about Leah, and that if she was right about her seeing me differently now, our proximity would be a problem whether anything happened or not. I told her that I agreed with that last point on principle, but that it all hinged on basically an unsubstantiated if. Lastly, I asked Eva how all of this had affected her own friendship with Leah, because I hadn't noticed major changes there. She said she doesn't harbor animosity towards Leah because of the lack of tangible reasons to, but that her suspicions have indeed meant that there had been a definite cooling in that relationship from her side, and described her interactions with Leah as cordial and not much more than that for the past while. I told her that I wasn't going to demand they be friends, of course, but reiterated that discussing things with Leah might help. I brought up couples therapy at various points throughout this discussion. Eva was initially apprehensive about the idea, but I insisted that it wasn't a matter of doubting my relationship with her, but one of getting qualified counseling to help us get through this stronger than before. We have started looking into it, and this will make it on the agenda once we find someone suitable. But at the end of the day, Eva abandoned the idea, forcing me to cut Leah out of my life at this stage. But we have things to sort through still. I'm glad I was able to actually discuss it with her this time around, and hopefully counseling will provide the help that we need. P.S. I would like to thank the people who threw advice my way on the original submission. I don't know that there will be another update, but I owed you this one at least. Sorry if it's a bit of a word salad. Left a bunch of stuff out for you, but if you have specific questions, I'll try to answer. Then in the comments section, one user said, "A woman's intuition is usually right. Eva seems like a reasonable person. I suggest you talk to Leah instead of convincing Eva she is imagining things. I'm positive you will find out that Leah wants more than friendship with you. At the end of the day, Eva is not comfortable with your closeness with Leah. Why is it difficult for you to acknowledge that and go low contact with Leah?" If, after Eva does go through with talking to Leah about it, it still doesn't allay her concerns, I would talk to Leah myself and make my mind up as to whether there's anything to it. At this stage, I don't have any reason to believe so. I'm not opposed to reframing my relationship with Leah if there are specific aspects of it which Eva is uncomfortable with. But so far, she has only asked me to cut Leah out entirely, which I am unwilling to do. I'd assume that would come up in counseling, if it is about certain aspects. Okay, so first off, guys, do you remember Kendall from 2 stories ago? I called her up in between stories, and before I even gave her my name, she asked for $6,000, so nothing's going on between her and I gave up on that. But as for the story, first off, I do not agree with that last comment, a bit much, I think. If there was something tangible and something real and some probable cause, then I would understand Eva's perspective. But she admitted to what OP said, she's pretty much grasping at straws here. And if something is discovered then, counselor, well then I will change my opinion on the matter. But right now there's nothing happening. The girlfriend admitted that there's nothing that's actually changed her mind, like, tangibly, so that's just where I'm staying on the matter. But anyway, if you guys disagree, go for it, do your thing. Anyway, next story. Story number 5. Roommate won't stop binge eating my own food. I, 30F, am temporarily renting out half a 2-bed, 2.5-bath condo for a 3-month contract. I live with the owner, 47F. When I moved in, she told me she had lost 100 pounds a year or two ago without working out. I've since come to learn that she is a health coaching business, aka she is an MLM. She only eats powdered supplements all day and has one keto meal a night. I looked into her company. It is essentially a starvation diet, and the supplements are quite expensive. None of this is a problem for me. Live and let live as long as you don't try to recruit me to the scam. The issue comes in at least once a week. She binge eats huge quantities of my food. It's high-fat, keto-type foods, entire jars of almond butter, bags of shredded cheese, 1-pound bags of pecans or cashews, and recently 60-ounce cans of fried onions. She eats these in one sitting, usually if I am away for a weekend. She is always very apologetic, embarrassed, and immediately runs out to replace what she has eaten. I feel bad. I definitely had some periods of binge eating in my 20s, but never to the point of eating someone else's food. One time, I said I was going to an event, but ended up canceling. When I came out of my room and walked into the kitchen, she looked like she had seen a ghost. There was my empty bag of 8 cheese slices, and her hand was in an almost finished Costco bag of nuts. It is very awkward. I have never had this issue before. I think she has some other mental health struggles, and I don't want to rock the boat. Plus, she does replace everything, although a few times I have had to ask her to, and I'm moving out in a week or so. Should I leave this in my review of the place? Then in the comments section, one user said, "I am glad she replaces your food, but that would be so annoying to live with." Yeah, sometimes I go to use things I sparingly use, like butter or avocado oil, and they are gone. Then user 2 commented and said, "She drank a bottle of avocado oil, true or false?" No, it was a spray. She had already used a full bottle, replaced that, then used that one up entirely without replacing. Then user 3 commented and said, "That person is destroying their liver and kidneys between the high-fat protein binge and the powdered supplements. They'll probably wind up admitted with AKI and get yelled at by their physician." Oh, absolutely. She asked me if she might have anemia because she's so tired. I pointed out she doesn't eat any carbohydrates, and that is definitely affecting her energy levels. She said her supplements provide all the nutrients that fruits and carbs have, so it can't be that. I would also be concerned for a lack of fiber. I recently have been seeing that colon cancer is on the rise because diets are more processed/lack fiber from fresh produce. Then user 4 commented and said, "Yeah, you should leave that on your review. I wouldn't want to live with someone like that who hasn't taken any steps to rectify it. It's good that she replaces the food right away, but it is still unacceptable that she's still eating all of it in the first place." That is very true. She has still gone into my cabinets to take things out and tries to put them back exactly where they were, but I still notice. For example, I always use a fork when prepping my overnight oats. Feels a little easier than a spoon, maybe just a weird habit of mine, and I use that fork to dig out my almond butter. A few times I've opened the jar and there are spoon marks, with quite a bit missing. This is also disgusting if she ate straight from the jar, which, knowing her hygiene habits, would not surprise me. Then user 6 commented and said, "This was so me in my 20s and teens. I was fit, but my binge restrict cycles were out of control. I was basically low-grade starving myself all day, and then the urge to eat large quantities of high-fat, high-carb food at night was uncontrollable. Especially peanut butter. Sometimes I would do it while half asleep. My binges would spill all over into my roommate's food sometimes, and I would feel really bad and replace it. I'm so glad that's all in the rearview mirror." It sounds like you are in the same spot as my roommate. Do you have any ideas on how I can compassionately approach her and tell her I think she needs some help? What would have been helpful to you during that time? Then the same user replied again and said, "Honestly, I was so consumed by guilt and shame and uncontrollable urges that I don't know what I would have needed to hear at that time. I definitely knew I had a problem. Maybe gently start with the fact that you had an eating disorder too and you know how it feels, and that you knew someone, me, who dealt with the same thing and treatment changed their life. Granted, I am not as small as I used to be, but neither am I out of control with my weight and food. If she's ready to embrace sanity around food over thinness, then she'll be receptive. But I was deathly afraid of weight gain at the time, so any solution that would cause my artificially low weight to stabilize upwards would have been met with a panic attack and extreme rejection. But just showing empathy is a big first step. When I lived at home for a year for ED treatment, I asked my parents to put a lock on the pantry door so I wouldn't eat at night, and that also helped. It sounds like it's too late for you to do that. Also an unfair burden on you, but just a thought.
I wish I had a better answer for you, but it sounds like she needs to hit rock bottom and have a come to Jesus moment where she realizes a normal life is more important than desperately trying to lose weight in an unhealthy way.
Well said. Thank you for this incredibly thought out response. I think I will have a conversation with her and say I feel for her, but she seems to lose control around food. I've had those feelings myself, but also make it clear that it bothers me, I will do. Maybe that soft boundary will be enough to push her in the right direction. I'm glad you got help though, and thank you again.
Then OP replied to a now deleted comment and said,
She replaces stuff but then helps herself to the replacement. Her hygiene habits are lax, so it really grosses me out if she's eating my shredded cheese straight out of the bag or almond butter with a spoon straight from the jar.
OP, instead of replacing your food, why doesn't she just go get her own?
I have no idea. Someone else commented it could be a psychological thing. If I don't buy the bad food myself, then I won't eat it. But then they feel out of control and see what's sitting right there and go crazy.
OP, your review of the place. Like, are you going to proactively seek out a review site and post about this woman's struggles like that just 'cause? I don't know. Why?
I am renting the place through a website similar to Airbnb. I've used it 5 other times and you are strongly encouraged to leave reviews. Update. Next day. The day after I originally posted, I noticed my 16-ounce sour cream was mostly gone and had spoon marks. I had used a fork to drizzle a small amount over nachos last time I used it, so safe to assume my roommate had eaten it. Our schedules don't always line up, so I decided it would be best if I talked to her via text when she is off at work. Convo went as follows. Me. Hey, when I was home earlier, I noticed a pretty significant portion of my sour cream was gone. Roommate. At the store now, was doing some work until 3 a.m. and had a low moment. I'm really sorry. Replaced by 5:15 p.m. It's okay. You don't need to replace. I did want to talk about it though. It bothers me when my food is missing. Can you please try to avoid touching my stuff in the fridge or my cabinet?
Yes.
I understand what it's like to be out of control sometimes when it comes to food. Let me know if you ever want to talk. Is there anything I can do to help make it easier to avoid?
It's not a good housemate trait. It's disrespectful of your stuff, and I'm sorry. I've been struggling lately, and thanks for bringing it up. I know I need to change.
It is not a character flaw. Life is tough enough as it is. I've been there before. Please do not beat yourself up about it.
Thanks. Well, do you need anything at the grocery store while I'm here?
Nah, I'm all set. Thank you. And when I got home, she had bought an identical new sour cream and got me flowers that have been up in her room all evening, though. A very nice gesture, though, and I really did not need any more sour cream and was not going to come close to finishing it in the next week before I move out. While she often takes small portions of certain things I probably wouldn't have used/noticed anyway, I mentioned a few comments on the original post. I have other concerns of her hygiene and food safety habits. She is frankly a pretty messy, disorganized, forgetful person, and frequently leaves the kitchen and living room, common areas, a mess with used dishware, crumbs, pieces of food on the couch, remnants all over the stove, dirty dishes in the sink for days, etc. I have also witnessed her several times leave meat and dairy out unrefrigerated for hours and then eat it. I do not want any person to eat straight out of my jar of almond butter and sour cream with a spoon, or out of a bag of my shredded cheese with unwashed hands, even if it is a tiny bit. I have always been very aware and intentional of my food safety. Thank you to everyone who shared their personal eating disorder struggles. As mentioned, I have definitely had my own journey towards a healthy relationship with food. After posting, I realized this situation may be particularly triggering to me, as I believe my dad has a long history of what I think is binge-eating tendencies. As many suggested, I set a boundary with my roommate, but also tried to be compassionate. Also, to those saying I should tear her down for being in an MLM, I don't think this would be productive in any way. Don't get me wrong, I have consumed a lot of anti-MLM content and agree they are pretty universally bad. Yet, I know that those involved in these scammy companies sometimes view naysayers as fuel to strengthen their bond with their team. I'm not touching on this with her. Also, some recommended buying a mini fridge or a fridge lockbox. I won't personally be doing this for my case, but both good ideas. I didn't know they made fridge lockboxes. Including this in the event, it is helpful to anyone reading this in a similar scenario. As far as leaving a review, I'm still torn on what to do. I rented this place through a service similar to Airbnb, in which you are strongly encouraged to leave reviews. I've used it 5 times before and honestly have never had to give less than 5 out of 5 stars. The food is a problem, but also she is very messy and often dirty as well. As someone who is super neat and organized and cannot sleep if there are dishes in the sink and counters that are not wiped down, I would even really struggle to give this 4 out of 5 stars. I am not sure if I can in good faith give a highly positive review. I am considering leaving no review, but in the event I do, one user gave me a good idea. To include the line, occasionally ate food I had purchased but always replaced it, and keeping that in there is short, sweet, truthful, and not malicious. I would never go into detail or out her though. And to those saying I should poison her with hot sauce, laxatives, cyan, etc., be effing for real. That is illegal and dangerous to both of us. This is a person that is struggling. You don't kick someone while they are down. Despite us not being a great match roommate-wise, she is a warm and kind person that has tried her best to make me feel welcomed in many other ways. I truly wish her nothing but health and happiness going forward. I am moving out in a week since my contract is ending, so I have a feeling there will not be any more food problems. This has been an eye-opening experience though, and I hope I handled it as kindly as I possibly could while needing to respect my own boundaries. And if all else fails, I like to reframe uncomfortable and difficult scenarios as something one can use in job interviews to answer, "Tell me about a time you faced a problem and how you fixed it." But I would love to hear from survivors, dietitians, or counselors in the ED sphere for ideas on how to help an acquaintance who is struggling with their relationship with food. I am open to constructive criticism for any tips on how I could have used better language in our conversation, for myself and others as a reference. Thank you, everyone. Then in the comments section, one user asked,
OP, has this happened before?
I'm not sure if she's eaten anyone else's food before. She didn't eat anything of mine for the first month or 6 weeks I lived there. I needed to say something because it was bothering me.
Okay, so I like this story, right? It's not malicious or evil. It's somebody who has a problem. At first, you're just kind of like, okay, what is wrong with this lady? Like, what's her problem? Then you realize, oh, she actually does have a problem. And then OP came from a place of love, but also like, hey, I want my freaking food, but and concerned, but also don't eat my stuff. And while she's moving out in a week, maybe just even talking about it is that come to Jesus moment being caught or it finally being acknowledged will set the roommate on her path to fixing herself, maybe getting out of an MLM, and at the very least eating food normally. But like I said, I really like this story. And oh, wait, hold on. I'm getting a phone call. Hello? Oh my God. Kendall, no, this has to stop, baby girl. No. Kendall, no. Kendall, no, I'm not giving you money. No, I am done, Kendall, and I'm ending this conversation with 2 words. Bye-bye.